Hello coders, welcome to Friday. It is Friday, woohoo! It is the end of the week. We have the weekend tomorrow. It is 7:42. I am a little bit late. I do apologize. 7:42 British summertime. We're going to crack right into it today. We're going to go right into the code because I am running a little bit late. What we're going to do today is we're going to deal with the query builder. Yesterday, I mentioned that we wanted to find all the invoices. Sorry, no, that's wrong. Find all the invoice items by the invoice ID. Now, we don't have a mechanism yet for that to work. This is what we're going to be dealing with today. If I just showed you quickly what I'm talking about. So if we go to the DB here, and we go into the query builder, we have a find all, we have a find one by, well, that technically should be find by ID, but hey ho. We have an insert or update, and then we have the mechanisms to update or insert. We don't have anything that allows us to do a find all by, okay? So what I mean there is that we want to have a way of running a where clause that has multiple conditions. So we can have find by invoice ID, that kind of thing. So it's finding by the invoice ID. You'd supply an array of data for that to work. So that's what we're going to be playing with today. If I quickly go to the browser here, I'll show you what I've added here. So we want to achieve find all invoices by invoice item by invoice ID. Okay, and this requires task 83, issue 83, update query builder with a find all by. So this should allow multiple where conditions. Okay, so that's what we're going to be playing with today. So let's go ahead and crack on with that. Okay, so we're going to do it as we've done before in a sort of TDD kind of manner. It is the query builder that we're going to be playing with. So we're doing a unit test. We're not doing a integration test at the moment. We will be doing soon. So DB query builder test. We essentially want to be adding something in here. So let's copy this one, for example, because this is the find all. This is now going to be find all by. And let's just make a little bit of room. Bring that up a little bit. So test find all. This is find all by. Query builder, that's going to run a find all by, and we're going to run, let's do the invoice. Yeah, let's just do a status for now, because we know that there are statuses in there. So we're going to do we want this to be expected, so select all from status, and we're going to expect a where clause where, let's do name is equal to, so let's put in the backticks here, name is equal to, and this is going to be, I can't remember what the name would be. It would probably be something like draft. And let's do, I think we've also got an internal name. It doesn't really matter. The fact is, we just want to have an expected string. This is just something for us to check against. So where internal name is draft, all capitals. Okay. Now, one thing I haven't done yet is I haven't actually put in a branch yet. So we'll do that before I move on and write any more code. So I think it was it 83 that we're working on? Yeah, issue 83. So let's do a git. First of all, let's do a git branch. Let's see where we are in the world. If I could spell it, it has an N in there. There we go. So we're on the master branch. I've just recently done a git pull. So I can do a git checkout -b, and let's do 83. This is query builder find all by. Okay, and let's just copy that before I hit enter. because I don't want to lose that work. There we go, cool. So that now we've switched to that branch that we're working within. Okay, so this is obviously going to fail because we don't have a find all by, but this is where we want to be. So let's first of all, let's bring up the machine. So let's do Docker, because I need to get into the Docker containers in order to run the test. So let's do reverse search of start to bring that in. So that will start. Come on, start that machine. I normally do this before the stream, so I do apologize. I'm a little bit rushed this morning, so I didn't. It was one of those mornings where half an hour felt like an hour, and then 10 minutes felt like 5 seconds. So I didn't realize what the time was. Good. Okay, just having a look at the audio there. I think the audio is coming through, but if anybody's having problems, do let me know. So, come on. This is why I normally do this before the stream starts, because it does take a bit of time. Okay, so then let's do an evaluation of this. This will evaluate the variables of the Docker machine to the current shell, which means that I can now do docker ps-a, and we can get all those good containers running. And now we can run into the container as bash, and now we can run the tests. Now this is going to be a unit test, so let's run unit, and then it is -g because we want to only run that single test. So we're going to do a copy of that and paste that in, and that will fail. It will fail because we don't have the find all by yet. So let's go and add that in. So this is going to do a find all by. Now we need an array to make this work. So we need to do options is equal to that, and this is also going to be an array. Now I haven't really given this much thought, so I am making this up on the spot, so this might not work. Well, it probably won't work straight away, so you're going to have to just to bear with me whilst I hammer through this logic. So the SQL should look like this, and we're going to copy that just for reference. Let's just put this in comments. Okay, so the SQL will start with select all from table. That's a good place to start. And then we need to have SQL, and we're going to concat that to a where clause, and we need to loop over each one of the options, and then push that through. Now, if we scroll up a little bit here, we can see that we've already got where clauses in the in the mechanism. So with update here, we've got where on all this jazz. So one could argue that we've already done this hard work, and we could, if we wanted to, split this out into some other method, and I think that's probably where I'm going to go. Let's just copy this first, though, because actually, technically speaking, it's this where bit up here. It isn't this bit because this is the fields. It is this bit here. So we are going to have to refactor this a little bit. Let's copy the code first, and then once we're happy with it, we can inject that back. So let's copy that. Let's just create a public static function. We're going to call this where, lowercase, oops, sorry, of course it's a function, beg your pardon, Again, this is going to return some SQL, so we're just going to return a string. Don't worry, I've still got that in my clipboard, I hope. So if I paste that in, that is the where SQL. So that's basically what that was, really what I was trying to achieve there. And this is an array, and the array here is going to be called conditions. And this is just going to be defaulting to a blank string. Oh, sorry, a blank array. And that is going to be the SQL. Okay, so that is going to loop over the conditions as key. So this is actually as field, really, if you think about it. And we're going to use parameterized queries, so that's pretty good. I can't spell field. I still can't spell it. The How to Code Well live streams, aka watch Pete spell things wrong. Save that. Okay, so public static function where we have the conditions here. For each conditions as field value. I can't spell array. Geez. Wow, I need some more tea, I think, more caffeine. Okay, so we have where, and then we're going to do self, or we're going to concat that to self where, passing in the options. Let's change that to be conditions. Let's change that to be where. There we go, that's a little bit more verbose. This is what I like to do when I refactor. I like to change my words and the meanings of things, because, you know, they need to explain and describe what it is that the variables are doing and the parameters and so forth. Okay, so we have the SQL here, and we are intending upon returning that, like so. So one would hope that that becomes the field, and then that becomes the value, but it's not really like that, to be honest, because you obviously have to bound the parameters. But let's just run this and see what happens. I'm not sure if this is going to work. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, of course, because we haven't given the where clause to here. So the where clause should be an array, and the array will have name, and it will also have internal name. Now we don't need to worry too much about the values, because the values are going to be what's bound to the query. So where 0 is equal to that, and 1. Okay, what am I missing here? I am pulling out the indexes rather than the. Of course I am. Yes, of course I am. That should be field. Sorry. Although if we are using bounded parameters, so that should therefore be value. If we are using bounded parameters, it would be like that, rather than bounded options. Sorry, not like that. Gosh, it's like I need to, where field is equal to. It's not like that at all. That is like, like this, of course. Yeah, so it's equal and then colon the value. So that value will be the field, the value, is that right? Field, and then that, yeah. Yes, I think that is correct. Gosh. So it'll be like something like this. Name, internal name, name. Now, one could argue that there's no point in doing this because you could just copy the field name rather than that through. What's going on here? Why is that? Oh yeah, there we go. But these values could be something completely different. So that's the reason. Okay, this is looking better. There also needs to be an AND statement in between. So for each blah, 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 this needs to have an AND. Now, the way we could do this, because obviously we don't want to have an AND on the last iteration, is we could do a I statement here. I or a count is equal to count of conditions. That's a bit of a code smell because we've got a variable named the same as a function. So let's do num is conditions. And what we do here is we do num plus plus, and then we do if num is less than sorry, this is total, beg your pardon, not num, this is total, and then num is equal to 1, is equal to 0 even. So if num is less than the total, then what we can do is we can do SQL is equal to and. There we go. A bit like that. Run that code again. So we have name is equal to name, and then that is equal to that. That is pretty much where we want to be. So I need to alter this a little bit. So this should be name is equal to colon name. And internal name is also equal to colon internal name, like so. Okay, let's run that. Okay, what's going on here? So it doesn't look lined up. Status, there is not a space there. Gotcha. Let's tidy this up a little bit. It doesn't actually need to be on 2 lines. There we go. And there we go, that's passed. Okay, that's awesome. Right, so let's go ahead and actually build a query for that. And also be mindful that with the find all, what we've got here is a self-where. And there are other places where the where clause is used, but it's used slightly differently. So we would like to refactor this and change this to use those. We're using here with the question marks, we're using parameterized queries, but with the colons, the different way we're doing it, which is in here, we're using bounded parameters. Slightly different way of doing it, slightly different way of working it. With the question marks, you can come up with any kind of thing, in any kind of order, right? But with the bounded parameters, you are saying that no, this is that actual value. So we need to be careful when we deal with that. So that's that query fixed. But what we would also like to do is deal with the actual the repository itself, which is actually making this call. So this is on the invoice item, and this is the place that we want to be working with, this find all by invoice ID. The idea here is that we pass in the ID of the invoice, not the invoice item. And we want to run a fetch all. So it's a find all by, and we want to pass in. So this is that query that we've just QueryBuilder that we've just created. We want to put in invoice ID, and we want to set that as the let's do ID. There we go. Okay, and then what we do here is we bound this to that. Okay, so we have ID. I guess I could do this in one hit, right? I guess I could do that in one sort of hit. It does look a bit daft that I'm having to do that here, but so be it. I'm not sure if I have a test for this yet. I don't know. Let me have a little look. So let's have a look. This would be in, because I did this very sort of like hit and miss yesterday, sort of like right at the end of the stream. So I'm not sure if I've put in a test. I don't think I have. That would be an integration test, and it would be an invoice item test. So this is find all invoice items. Yeah, this is find all invoice items by so here we go. This is the test that I did put in. So we create an invoice and we save the invoice. That means we've got that record saved, persisted. We then find that invoice from the database. So we then have the ID that was last inserted. And then after this, what we do is we create two entities. So we have, let's bring that up a little bit. We have an invoice item, the first one, and then we have the second one. So two completely different invoice items. But we want to set the invoice. So this is setting the invoice that we've just saved to the invoice item. This will set the invoice item ID. And then what we want to do is save those. So that's now saving those two invoice items to that saved invoice. And then what we wish to do is find all by the invoice ID. And that is, if I click through here, that will go to the manager, which will then pass that through into the repository as a facade. And then what that will do is it will call this thing, it'll do a loop, hydrate each one of these invoice items, and so on and so forth. So I think I ran that test yesterday and it failed because we didn't have the QueryBuilder in place. But now it is in place. Let's have a little run through. Let's make sure that it works as expected. It probably won't on the first run. There's probably some tweaking I need to do. MySQL at 8 in the morning is never easy. So this is now an integration test. -G. And again, as yesterday, it's not allowing me to copy and paste that. There we go. Okay, so that has failed. Invalid parameter was not defined. I'm just going to grab my tea. So as I thought, it has failed. So we're going to work through this and we're going to see if we can get this to work as quick as possible. So this is an issue where the parameters are not specified correctly. Let's just, first of all, let's just remove this find all by invoice ID, and let's just make sure that this runs. I don't want this to be another bug hidden away, because we are doing an awful lot of stuff. It's an integration test after all. So yeah, it is a problem here. Okay, all right, so let's step through this. So we got a found invoice and we're getting the ID. And let's just make sure that we have the ID, so we can do code sep debug. Let's pass in the ID, which is found invoice get ID. Let's run that with debug mode. running. So that should print out 1. So that is the ID that we're passing through. So we have the ID, that's fine. So let's click through this. So this is find all by invoice ID. Invoice item and invoice, that is the table name. This is the parameters. And we're running a fetch all. I believe that needs to marry up with that, I think. Let me run that and see. Whoops. No. This is find all must be a type none is given. Ooh, this is a different error. Return value of item repository find all must be type of an array, right? But none was given. Ah, okay. See, I'm not actually returning this. So I did this code yesterday in a sort of a mad dash to sort of get it completed, but I forgot to do the actual return statement. Silly me. This is why testing is good. Test, test, test your work, please. Test it. Because, you know, you find all of these issues here. So that's passed. Okay, that's passed. And the issue was, the original issue, apart from that not having a return statement, was that this needed to be bound correctly. That was the problem. So that's the field name, sure, but that is the actual parameter that we're binding. That's the value of that parameter. That is the bounded nus, I guess that you would call that. Yeah, so that works. That works, and I'm pretty surprised at that because that I was kind of thinking that would take a little bit more longer time. So that works as expected, which is awesome. I'm pretty happy with that. One thing we could do, though, let's just run all of the tests, just make sure that everything is working as expected. Remember, there are 2 failing tests, okay? There are 2 failing tests to do with the 404s, so I am completely aware that this will fail, but it should only fail twice. And they're those 2. Okay, we have just tested the whole thing, and we have 115 tests, 235 assertions, and 2 failures. Those 2 failures are the failures that I'm aware of. And we will get to them at some point. But I want to spend a little bit of time just to refactor the work that we've done. Because with the query builder here, as I mentioned before, we are now altering, let's just run that. We are altering the where clause here, and we're using the where clause again up in the update here. So I kind of want to condense these two into two things, all right, or into one thing, I should say. So before I do any of that though, let's just commit this work. Let's get it to a committed, stable state. So let's come out of the container. Let's now do blah, 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 blah. What am I doing? Let's do a git branch. I can't remember. Am I on the branch? Yes, I am on the branch. Let's do a git commit -m, and this is adding where we're adding where clause. Okay, boom. And then let's do, oh, no, I need to do, they're not staged. I need to do git add, sorry, src, all of that, as well as tests, and all of that as well. Okay, let's put that in, good. Let's now do a hub pull request. Thank you, with -p, sorry. Okay, let's now we're in Vim, so we do adding where clause. This fixes, I think we said it was 83, but I'll just double check. It's 83. Yep. If I go back to the browser, I'll show you what I'm doing here. I'm just having a look at the issues. So 83, and we also were dealing with that 84. I think I saw. Yeah, 84. So fixes 83 and also fixes 84. Okay, let's exit and write and quit. Off we go. Come on, create me my pull request. Thank you. So I've just wrote and quit and pushed that up. So now in the browser here, we should now have our pull request, which we do, and we should be able to merge that in, which we can. Delete the branch. Bye-bye. And I'm going to create a new issue here. And this is refactor where clause. Just so I can get this really in my own. I'm thinking a lot at the moment about testing and refactoring in the back of my brain. I'm considering doing a video on YouTube about testing and refactoring and when the best time to do refactoring and the best time to do testing, because I think that they're two separate things, right? But they can get quite muddled up. So I'm thinking about doing a video on that. So that this is kind of like trying that out. So refactoring in its own branch, that kind of thing. But anyway, let's go back to the code. So we've just created a new 86 issue, a new issue. So we can do git. Let's do git checkout of master. Master. And then let's do a git pull to pull in those changes that we've just pushed up to the pull request and merged. I'm also going to do a git branch, and I'm going to just tidy up my workspace because I don't like having dead branches around. So we're going to do delete. It's 81. 81. Find invoice item. And also there's 83. QueryBuilder. Find all by. So that should now remove those. And we're going to do a git checkout -b of 86. I think I said it was 86. 86. There we go. 86. And this is a refactor of where. Refactor where. It makes sense to me. Okay, so let's deal with that. So we're in the QueryBuilder test here. We have the tests that run all of the things, and this is a good stable place to be. Having tests before you do a refactor is such a good thing because you already know that it works, right? Refactoring shouldn't be the case, and this is something that I'm going to iterate. Refactoring should never be the case where you are altering features and functionality requirements that were passed down to you by the client. You should never, ever... Well, that sounds really sort of like brutal. All right, you should try as much as you can not to refactor your code whilst you are adding new features. Try, in my opinion, this is my opinion, try to say, okay, I've got bad smelly code here, but it does work, and we do have tests that pass, and the client is happy because it does work. Now I'm going to do and refactor my work. The problem, and I'll go into this in more detail with a video, is that if you start refactoring your code whilst you're building features, is that you'll refactor code that touches upon other things unintentionally, right? So for example, if you were adding, say, I don't know, a shopping cart, right? A feature that was a shopping cart, and you found that you needed to also get information about the category of the product. So you were dealing with the category feature, but you noticed that there was a variable that was sort of not spelt correctly, or it could be named slightly different, or there was a method that could be called in a different manner. It's very tempting to change that and tidy that up, but you're also interfering with other code that is out of the remit of the feature that you're building. So it's okay in my opinion, to push code to production that is smelly code. If it works and you have a test that backs that up, that's okay. After you've pushed it to production, you can then now look at it and go, well, I need to clean that up and make it more readable and more understandable. Because that, at the end of the day, that's what refactoring is doing. You're making the code cleaner, more readable, more understandable. And so, like, for example, this feature that I created here, this test find all by. So I intentionally wanted to do this today because I've got this idea of the refactoring and testing in the back of my head, as I mentioned. And what we've done here is we've made a code smell. We've made an intentional code smell, because if I click through here, we have this. So we have where and then self-where. This is a function that we created. This is the feature that we built. But if you notice that this self-where is doing pretty much, if I click into this, it's doing pretty much the same thing, essentially, right? The output is the same as, say, this, as, say, this up here. Okay, so there's two places where I could be using that same thing. The thing is that I could, during that feature build, I could have hacked up that code. But can you notice that this is using question marks, and this here, down here, wherever we are, is using colons. So it's a different way of using the where clause. So it's slightly different. So yes, the output is the same. So you're actually creating a query that has the where clause, but the actual string is slightly different. Now, for anybody who, it's only different by one character. So unless you're fully on the ball and realize that, you could go, okay, I'm going to refactor this code and I'm just going to throw in this new where public static function in this update routine, and forget that we actually need question marks instead of colons. And you've gone and broken a completely different feature. This is the whole point of the idea that I have, is to isolate your refactoring from building of a feature. Features are adding and removing and editing existing features. Refactoring is making your code cleaner and more usable and more readable and more extendable. Well, not extendable, but more. We read code more than we write code, right? So we want to write the code in a very readable way. But sometimes it's okay to write code that is messy to get it to work, and then refactor it afterwards, once you've acknowledged that it needs some change. That's what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to be, and I know that as soon as I put this in, so colon equals colon blah, 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 into this, it's going to break, because this is expecting question marks. Anyway, that was a bit of a rant, so I do apologize. I'm going to grab some tea. I've also been asked to speak at a user group, so I'm kind of thinking in the back of my head as to topics to talk about. So I'm kind of my mind goes into various different directions. There's also a topic that I would like to talk about, and that's about decoupling APIs, but that's a completely different rant. Okay, so let's deal with this. Ideally, what we want to do here is share the same code. So we want to slim this down, because really, if you think about this update routine is also doing many responsibilities. We want to update, run an update query, but we also have to cope with this where clause. So it is pretty smelly, this code. Okay, so fields implode, that's fine. Where now. Essentially what I could do here is I could do where and then self where and then passing in the where clause. That is essentially where we want to be. Whoops. Without any of that. That's essentially where we want to be in our life. But I think if I was to run this, it will just fail. And I believe that we do have tests for this. So these would be the insert or update tests, or insert tests. Well, it would be an update test. Sure, it would be an update test, which is here, test update. So we can pinpoint this and we can run this. Let's go back into the container. Up, 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 up. There we go. So we want to. It's a unit test. -G. Is it a unit test? Yes, it is a unit test. -G. So we paste that in and we run that. So notice it's failed. Okay. And that kind of gives me confidence about what I just said about the fact that if you start refactoring too soon, then you're going to interfere with other features if you're not overly aware of the implications that your refactoring has. So notice here that we're using where ID is equal to :5. This is because we're using colons and we're no longer using question marks at that instance. Also, we're doing it throughout this, so we need to fix that as well. Now, this is going to have implications with all sorts of things. Yeah, so this is actually quite a bigger change than I thought, but hey ho, that's the way it goes. That is the way it goes sometimes. So really, these should be references. And I think what we should do at this stage of the game is we should just agree that we want to use these bounded parameters rather than the question marks. I think that's probably the best course of action. Keep it nice and consistent, where an ID is equal to ID. Okay, so that's the expected string now, and it's not. So, oops. Okay, so how do we deal with that? Let's scroll down to the bottom here and let's have a look and see how we dealt with. Okay, yeah, it was just called the same. So we deal with that by putting in these as the parameters rather than the values. VAT and ID. Now that's going to pass, I believe. Well, no, it's not. Actual is that. No, that's not going to pass because we need to actually update the mechanism here. So fields, that needs to be the field names and obviously this and so forth. So that does need to change. So what we're doing here, we're imploding the array keys. And we're imploding that with that. So that needs to be altered, and also this needs to be altered too. We're running the array keys here. Really what we need to do, of course, is we need to do a for each loop. So this is data as field value. And the more I look at this, the more similar it is to the update. It's to the where clause itself. It should be similar to this here, apart from the and. So it's very similar to that. I tell you what, let's just grab that. Let's just grab the whole thing. And really, this needs to be in its own little method, but we'll work with that soon. So okay, so we have the total, which is the total of the data. So for each data as field value, then we do this. We don't need to have that. That then becomes our fields. So we don't need that, and we don't need that either. Sorry. Why is that red? What's going on? Oh, there we go. So we don't need that. We do need the SQL. So this is now fields. Or we could do that, couldn't we? No, let's just do that. Fields is equal to da da da. Run that. Okay, so update invoice set reference is references. Okay, total is total. This is what we're hoping for. We have update invoice set reference, so we have an issue there. So that's fine. That's fine. Not sure why that is like that. Invoice set reference, yep. That needs to have a space between each one. So that is that. Let's put in that. Okay. We also need to have a comma after each one as well. And I'm just going to dive back into here because this needs to be... I'm just wondering why that's references. There we go. That's better. Okay. So now we need to add the commas in play. And we're only adding commas up to the final one here, which is very similar to the way we were doing that where clause, where we had the counter. So total. What am I doing? Data. There we go. If counter is less than total, then fields is equal to a comma, like that, with a space. And let's do single quotes instead of double quotes. And that goes like that, that goes like that. And obviously we need to have counter plus plus. Okay, let's see. Does that work? Okay, so we have invoice set reference, comma. There is a problem here. That's because that is required. So that's else. Space. That's an equal sign. Okay. So invoice set reference, comma, total, VAT is VAT. Right, we have this erroneous question mark. That is not required anymore. Okay, we have a space. Okay, what's going on here? Okay, we are missing the there we go. Okay, so that's now passed. Now this is this should be moved out into its own little function, I believe. So let's do public static function fields. Let's do fields. Let's do data, which is an array, and let's pop that into here. So this now becomes SQL. And we're going to return SQL, which is therefore a string. String. There we go. So now we can do update table set, and we can do fields. So we can do self fields data like that. So we could actually make this a little bit more cleaner. So that now becomes like that. So it's a single line. So we update table, we set, and then these are the fields where we set the where, like so. Let's run the test, make sure that that hasn't broken again. Okay, now I'm completely and utterly aware that I've actually broken a lot of the queries. If I ran the integration tests, I think this is going to fail. I think. I'm not 100% sure, but as I have the tests, I have some sort of safety net to check. So let's do integration and run all that. Surprisingly, that has come through okay. Let's just run all of them. Yeah, see, we've got problems. Acceptance tests, we have problems. Yeah. Yeah, we've got quite a few. And I think it's because, yeah, we are putting in, we are expecting these question marks where we should actually have, we should have the others. So let's, and then we have these bounded parameters when we're actually doing the updates. So, okay, we need to go through and tidy those up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably do this offline, or I might do this on the Sunday stream, because I need to shoot off now and get on with some other bits and pieces and work. I don't like leaving things in a broken state, but time is against me, and I was a bit late this morning, so I do apologize for that. But essentially what we need to do is go through, there's three failures here, three errors and 3 failures. We need to fix each one of these things, and then we need to really vigorously fix these issues here. But this just proves the point that refactoring code can often break code if you don't do it carefully. And you should be splitting up your refactoring and your building of features separately. So we're gonna just take a pause on this, and I'm gonna get on with some other bits and pieces. Next stream is this Sunday at 2:30 British summertime. We might play around with this a little bit, but I also have some other things that I want to get on with, some other side projects that I want to be playing with too. Also today there is a podcast. If you go to howtocodewell.fm, later on today I will push out a new podcast, which is exciting. So that's a video show, so you can see that on How to Code Well, the YouTube channel, as well as the podcast. So that's Twitter is not a podcast player. Apple, iTunes, and Spotify, and Stitcher, and all of those other good podcast players. You can find How to Code Well, so just search for that. So that's coming out today. But in the meantime, happy coding, and I will see you hopefully Sunday at 14:30 British Summer Time. Speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye.